to the MLM Lunchtime Leadership Show. So we are on the last chapter of Winning with People by John Maxwell. I hope you guys are enjoying this, have enjoyed this book as much as we have. This is the first time I went through it, so it's been on my books, a list of books I needed to read for quite some time, and I'm so happy I finally got to do that. So before we jump into this last chapter, let me go and invite a few people. Alrighty, well, let's get started. So we're on the satisfaction principle today. So in great relationships, the joy of being together is enough. And you want to ask yourself, do my closest friends enjoy just being with me? Do you have that one person where you guys can just sit together and not say a word for almost hours? That's the type of friend that you want to be around. So you know when you're comfortable with somebody when you can stand silence and not talking. And those are the people that you're most comfortable with. So a lasting relationship begins as a healthy relationship, and these four factors help to create the right climate for relationships to where simply being together is enough. So number one is shared memories create a bonded environment. Do you have a person where you have good memories where you could be like, remember when? So whenever we go to a conference or convention with people on our team, we try to create good memories with people, and a lot of times that surrounds by food. And we're like, where's something really neat that we could go try that everybody can just jump in the car with us and we all go? Or what cool site, because sometimes a lot of conventions happen in neat places like Las Vegas, Florida. Everybody jump in the car, we're all going to Disney World. So you want to have be that person who really initiates, like, hey, let's go out and let's make some memories. We're here to learn, but you also need to have fun too, because it's not just about going and having fun, it's building those relationships with the people that you're working with. So that way years from now, people could say like, oh my gosh, remember when this happened? Remember when we did this? You want to be able to build that type of community in your team. Number two, growing together creates a committed environment. So the start of a relationship and a relationship ending are often are much easier than the hard work of sustaining a relationship. And why is that? The beginning is always exciting. Like, it's new, we're just getting to know people, and ending a relationship is where a lot of people just like to walk away, because keeping and maintaining a good relationship, whether it be with a spouse or a friend, is hard work. So people who grow together become more committed to one another, and relationships grow regardless, and they will either grow closer or they'll grow apart. Number three, mutual respect creates a healthy environment. So respect produces two things. It creates trust and engenders servanthood. If you respect somebody, you're more likely to help out and just do something just cause. And if you really respect someone, you know you could trust them with whatever you need. Number four, unconditional love creates a safe environment. So when somebody loves you with no strings attached and no personal agenda, it's the most freeing thing in the world, and it creates a safe environment wherever you are. So satisfaction principle questions. I think I'm actually going to have Jeff go through these ones, but basically It's just, what are you doing to create these relationships? How are you maintaining them? You could really judge a person on their character based on their relationships. How long have they had these relationships? Do they have relationships that have lasted 10 years? Or do they have relationships that they've only had for the past 10 months? Now, sometimes that can be due to circumstance. With a lot of questions that we ask, like you guys have seen in previous episodes, we like to ask a lot of questions when we first recruit people or first meet them and figure out what their background is and just where they are. Sometimes there are people who just moved to the States. Sometimes there are people who just moved to the area. But if they've been here all their lives and they've only had maybe one friend in the past 10 months, you got to ask a couple questions about their character and why is that. Excuse me. But anywho, I'm going to turn these questions over to you.
Okay, so you're trying to build a relationship. Unconditional love creates the safe environment. Unconditional meaning there are no other requirements than you basically being showing up. In some cases, when you're building these relationships, we say unconditional. Of course, there are some things that you can't get past. Obviously, if people are out to physically hurt, emotionally hurt, damage people, you got to cut that off. But the first question is this: can a standoffish and can somebody be standoffish and still develop a rewarding relationship? I think some people come into relationships and they're damaged in some way, and they kind of don't connect right away. They kind of hold back. They're trying to keep their guard up, and it's just going to take more time. It's just going to take more time getting together, finding out who they are, why they're like that. There's a lot of damaged people out there. John talks about in this book, hurt people. The hammer principle. If you're hurting, you're gonna, and you're the hammer, you see everything as a nail. You just want to smack the crap out of it. So, what is the price a person has to pay to develop that relationship? It's going to be a lot deeper, and it's going to take longer. It doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be good or bad, because you don't know until until you develop it. But it's going to take longer. It's going to take more work. You're probably going to have to go through some craziness before you get through to where you want to be in a relationship, which is everybody's kind of at the same point. Two is just think about people who you personally know who have sustained a good relationship for more than 20 years. Any kind of relationship, whether it's marriage, business, friendship, partner. Describe their relationship. What do they keep? What keeps the relationship going? And a lot of times, what I'm seeing from the people that I know that have been around for years, what keeps it going is the next goal, the next dream, the next objective, the next mission. Like, what are they doing? Some people just exist in the same space. And I've met plenty of people who exist in the same space, that avoidance, if you know anybody like that, they just kind of try to avoid each other long enough. Some people have two separate paths, two separate missions and what they're doing. And then they come together and discuss what they did. It just really depends. And I think the dynamic has a lot to do with personalities. Certain personalities don't want to make anybody feel bad, don't want to, ruffle feathers, don't want to upset. So typically what I see is you have somebody who's making decisions and you have a lot of people pleasers out there that, talk about wanting to get away, but they're not willing to get away. To start over again in some cases. I just don't find a ton of people who are really connecting at a deeper level and kind of trying to be on a mission to go somewhere. But the ones that do, you'll be amazed. The ones that do seem to have the most success. In my coming across so many people, the people who have those relationships for 20 years, that are focused on goals, that are focused on dreams, that are focused on getting ahead, they're the people who seem to have the better relationships. Obviously, we have multiple businesses, so I deal with people of all different backgrounds, all different social status, from new jobs to, careers that span decades. And I found this to be true. It's regardless of the income, the age, the background. It just really has to do with who their personalities are and what you want out of life. Some people just want to exist. Some people want to get the most out of it. 3, it says in a relationship with high degree of safety, how does mutual respect and unconditional love come into play? With a high degree of safety. I don't even know what he's asking there, honestly. I mean, everybody's a little bit different, but I'm going to skip that one because I really don't have anything to say about a high degree of safety. I think, talking to damaged people, you have to kind of keep that safety net. What does he say in the book?
I hear there's a couple different questions.
It says, in with a high degree of safety, it says, think about the closest relationship in your life. Do you feel safe with that person? Can you say anything you want? Okay, so Simon Sinek talks about, he says, the purpose of the leader is to keep the group safe. The purpose of the leader is to create a safe environment for everybody to grow in. So I think that's kind of interesting, that if you're building a company, you're building a network, you're building a family, the objective is to keep the relationships safe where you're able to explain, express, ask questions, and nobody's going to get ousted and nobody's going to get reprimanded for basically trying to figure things out. You don't usually see this in leadership positions, or at least I haven't seen this in leadership positions. I haven't seen it around work. Most people are like brushing under the rug, talk about it later. This is a conflict. This is a problem. I don't want to deal with it. It's not my department. I'm not part of that union. I've seen it in many, many different ways. But from my experience, there are very few places where that safety is there. But when it is, I find that the work environment is so different. The work environment is usually more upbeat when you can, just kind of say, hey, this is what's going on, without having the weird to dance around a certain person that may, be uncomfortable, feel uncomfortable. Obviously, there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now. But just to be able to say, hey, this is an issue, can we figure it out, and then figure it out and move forward. Very few places are kind of that open and that safe to express. But when you do, again, the environment is so much better. So moving on. 4, it says, describe some way that married couples can grow together to make sure that they don't grow apart. There's a couple things. There's a great book that we both read, His Needs, Her Needs. And in that book, it talks about the 5 key things that a guy looks for and the 5 key things that a girl would look for. And these are your basic things. Not everybody has every one of them, but everybody has kind of a little piece of something like that. So if you're trying to build a long-term relationship that kind of works, he talks about spending time together. Quality time is what they call it. Open communication. Being able to say, hey, not only this is what's going on, but this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. Admiration. Compliments that kind of go back and forth. Family support. It's probably one of the best books I've read that really hits on both sides, both levels of what you're looking for, what you want. I've read and looked into a couple other books. Tony Robbins also talks about, understanding the difference between the masculine emotions versus the female emotions, and how, everybody has a little bit of everything, but how they dynamically work together. Really, really important. Being able to ask questions and grow. I mean, I think the other main thing is to be able to say, hey, what are we doing? Where are we going here? And when 2 people are on the same page and you're both working towards the same thing, it's amazing how communication gets better. When 2 people are working against each other in opposite directions, and they each have their own focus completely, and you're not coming together on any level, you really kind of end up with issues. Or what happens is you open the door to a 3rd, 4th, 5th person who, it's kind of funny. People are weird when they see something that they like. They see a security. as soon as the door is open, there's always somebody waiting there to also get in the door, which obviously can damage a relationship really fast. So,
and something that I wanted to add too, this is something that we talked about early on in our relationship as well with reading all these books. We're like, both of our parents were divorced, and we're like, what are some things that we can do to make sure that we don't grow apart? So with reading all this, we wanted to set these goals. That way we stay together, and we made a rule with the both of us that if we're going to go work on any project, it needs to be something that we want to work on together, no matter if we want to interest in, and that we both can work in together. And that's going to keep us growing together, and we're always with each other. Now, some people have a hard time with that, and we get a lot of compliments but we also get a lot of people that say, oh my God, I could never work with my spouse. And it's really unfortunate to hear that, because what that's saying is I can't work with my spouse. Being able to work with your spouse forces you to communicate in a way that you have never communicated before. You have to communicate. So in the relationships where you're avoiding each other and just skating by, I can tell that based on what you're saying to me, and it's very unfortunate to hear that. But the cool thing about working with your spouse is that it forces you to communicate, and you have to work together. So with us doing that, we've been able to have a closer relationship because we're forced to communicate, and if there is an issue, we do need to talk about it. And no relationship's perfect. We bicker too, even though most people don't see it. But we're forced to resolve these things, and it's like, okay, well, this didn't work out this way. How do we need to fix it? So the next question, number 5.
the last one, have you shared experience and their memories affected your closest relationships? So that's really, long term. Hey, here's where we went. Here's what we did. Do you remember when? I mean, Facebook now has a really good thing. Not all of it's good, but one of the good things is it shares memories. Some of those memories aren't also, always the best, because I've had people who are like, I need to off Facebook because it keeps bringing up stuff that happened a year, 2 years, 3 years ago that necessarily isn't, good or positive. But at the time, I wanted to, memorialize would be the best way to say it, what happened. So being able to look back at those pictures, being able to have those conversations, do you remember when? Do you remember when, especially in business, do you remember this convention? Do you remember this trip? Do you remember the drive? We've actually been on several trips. So, remembering the other day, I was going through pictures, and a group of us went to Disney World for an event, a convention. And on the way back, we decided, well, we really hadn't seen the beach, and we've been in Florida. So we decided to drive over to St. Augustine because, St. Augustine really is, kind of a cool place. Very interesting, what I would say. We were able to see the fort. We were able to walk through the town. We were able to hang out on the beach, and then drive the rest of the way back. Now, we probably spent too much time there, but whatever. It was a really, really, really good time. And when you share those experiences, hey, do you remember this? It's kind of fun to be able to look back. But I think what it also does is it's like, hey, we need to do this again. What's next? What's the next trip? Right before the pandemic hit and they shut everything down for almost no reason, we ended up, and I understand it was scary, and there were people who were sick. I have friends, too, that we lost. So I'm not saying that it didn't happen. I'm just saying they blew it out of proportion. So we actually went to, in February, we went to 10X. It was something we were kind of debating whether to do. I couldn't figure it out. And then eventually I was like, you know what? We're going to go. And that was sort of like the big Christmas present that we ended up doing. Went to Las Vegas, which we always love. We shopped way too much. And it was just kind of cool to see the city and the people. And, we stayed in the Excalibur, which I know is an older hotel, but it was just kind of cool because, you walk by it so many times and you're like, I wonder what that's like. It worked for what we were doing. We were able to take the tram past the Luxor, which is a giant pyramid with a huge light on top. It's actually the brightest light, I believe, in the world. You can actually see it from the moon, which is kind of crazy. So just a really, really good time. Went to 10X. I mean, we got to see some amazing speakers, some people that I've wanted to actually, meet, but, half of the people that I thought were the best were actually guests that he didn't tell were coming. Dana White from the UFC, John Travolta, the actor. I'm trying to think of some of the other people. Usher, Floyd Mayweather. I mean, these were just some of the people who were just guests. He just showed up, we didn't even know were coming. And I'm sure he told somebody, but most of the people in the room did not know those people were going to be there. Being able to see Kevin Hart, I was like, well, I'm going to be able to see Grant Cardone, which I really, really like business-wise, and to hear, some of his sales techniques and, real estate ideas. And then on top of it, to hear from all these other famous people. And then Kevin Hart was another person that was on the list to be able to see just because of, who he is as a person. And the things he's done. I've watched some of the outtakes, like where he grew up, and he still stays connected with some of the friends from way back. And a lot of people don't build those long-term relationships that last, and he's been able to figure out how to do it and kind of maintain what I would say a more normal life than the average person, although he can afford to do anything. So that's kind of what I got out of this. Amazing book. Last chapter. Starting tomorrow, we're going to start the next one, which is Failing Forward. Failing Forward is probably one of my favorites. It was one of the first ones I read by John Maxwell that I really got a lot out of. And I was like, man, people need to read this. People need to understand this and the principles. So look forward to going through that next. So hope you'll join in with us. And anything else?
So if you guys would like the notes from this book, go subscribe to the link below. We're sending out our notes for each chapter every day. So if you haven't done that yet, go subscribe, and also go follow us on our YouTube channels. We're uploading each one of these to YouTube, so if you'd like to go back to a video and take some notes, you're more than welcome to. So with that, we will see you guys tomorrow on the new book.